Okay. So yeah, so the seminar that we did many years ago helped a lot of people get their foot in the door with episodic. So we just thought it was high time to do it again. So I'm going to just start with a little intro, and then we'll get into talking with everybody. And if you have questions that come up during the talk, please put them in the chat. And if they pertain to what the topic is right at that moment, I'll read them out and we'll cover them as we go along. Otherwise, we'll do a Q&A at the end as usual. So yeah, so episodics, how are they different from features? They move a lot faster, first of all. You can do an episode, let's see, a network can show, and 1 hour network show can shoot in like 7 to 9 days, maybe. A cable show maybe shoots in 9, 10, 14 days. Pages per episodic script, most of them average about 50 pages, and 43 minutes of airtime for network, allowing for the commercials, and maybe 54-ish for cable or streaming. A half-hour show is shot in about 5 days. That's about 30 to 35 pages and maybe 23 minutes of airtime to allow for the commercials. And I once asked a showrunner, like, gee, how much does it cost budget-wise per episode? And I'm kind of remembering she said it's maybe $1 million per episode. Now that may go more or less, depending on the show, but anyway, it's just like a rough idea. You can shoot sometimes 50 setups a day, maybe even before lunch. You do a lot of strips per day. We're going to talk about block shooting and cross-sporting and leapfrogging cameras. Another big difference is on a feature, your director is the one you answer to. He's your boss. On an episodic, you have a different director every episode. They are the guest on the show, and they have to answer to the producers and the showrunner. Showrunner is the producer who's always on set. He or she oversees the overall look and tone of the show. Many times you will see the writers at the Village. They are often producers as well. And on set, you're going to hear a lot of discussions that remind you that it's really more of a business and it's really all about the money. What were the ratings? What were the shares? What time slot are we in? What other shows are we up against in the same time slot? Are we over budget? Are we making our day? Whatever. So that's sort of like my mini intro. It moves fast. It moves a lot faster. I don't know about you guys, but after I'd worked on some episodic for a while and I did a feature again, I felt like I was on a vacation doing the feature again. Anyway, let's go on and let's start talking about good business. Do my panelists want to start talking a little bit about that? What does a day player need to know when you come in to sub or do a tandem? What does the key script supervisor need to maybe do to help out their day player?
I can jump in, Diane, if you want. My name is Rachel Phillippe. I'm a script supervisor in New York. I've been doing episodic TV. I'm going to date myself, but for almost 20 years. Something I would do in order to prepare someone to come into a show that I'm working on is I like to take a good look at the work and compile any notes pertinent to the work that may help them understand what's happening. Is it a day shoot, a night shoot, interior, exterior? Is it winter? Should you come with a winter coat? Things like that. Also, how does it connect to the work that we've been working on? The ideal situation is to take a day off when all of the work on the day is just, continuous to itself. So there's not a lot of in between, but that doesn't always happen. So I do like to provide notes about what to look for, what's coming, and what I need coming out of that work. Hey, you're going to shoot these guys going out the door. When you do, can you tell me the screen direction? Which door did they use? What were they holding? Because I'm going to pick up the other side of the door the next day. All of this kind of circles back to communication. I like to keep a line of communication to myself, but also to the crew that will be on the set for the person as a point person. So I like to talk to ADs. I like to talk to the different departments and say, hey, I'm out tomorrow, but so-and-so's coming in. Do you mind stepping in and being a contact person for them? Should they have questions about things? And then those group of people who were like, yeah, totally. I pass that information on to whoever's coming in, so that they feel, so that you guys have, somebody has support, someone's there for you on set, knowing, hey, you're just coming in, you're new, you're fresh. You can ask me the questions because it's daunting. There's a lot of people on set. There's a lot of people to ask. There's a lot of moving parts. You know, I try to lay the groundwork for whoever's coming in to get a little prep time, to read the script, get the paperwork out there so that you get a sense, like you can have a sense coming in, you can feel pretty confident. I've read the material. I know I'm doing scenes, 17, 18, 19, but I've read the script. I understand now how it fits in the whole. So those are the things that I think are important as the key script supervisor on set to provide for somebody coming in. So there's a groundwork and there's a level of comfort and understanding of, what you're getting into. Does that cover what you want, Diane, or you want me to go on?
And I have to say, sometimes when I've covered for other people, when I've had the ability to read that script ahead of time, I've caught things on set. And, just from having read that script, I will ask the director, like, wait a second, I got this new revision last night from the main script supervisor, and I noticed this change in the scene that she pointed out to me, that now doesn't make sense with what's happening in this scene. So it sort of made me a bit of a hero that day. So they were very grateful that, I had read that script. So,
and I would be grateful to someone that came in that found that, because that saves everybody, and that doesn't make anybody look bad. It makes you look great, and it's just helpful for everybody. And I certainly wouldn't mind it if a script supervisor came in, filled in for a day, and found something that other people hadn't. I would think you were a hero too.
Exactly. And even if some crew points something out, I'm grateful for that, because there's only so much that you can handle sometimes, and every little bit helps. So yeah.
No, it's not worth getting your ego hurt if a grip comes over and says something, hey, and many times that they're not really quite aware of what's actually going on, or somebody says something and say, well, we're really not using that shot. Don't worry about it, but thank you. But yeah, anybody that has, and same with, directors usually appreciate that sort of thing too, that somebody comes in and is helpful and has a suggestion. If you're smart enough, you don't mind that, and your ego doesn't get bruised.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. You were talking, do you want to talk about the paperwork? Sometimes it kind of used to be that we would ask for people to use the same paperwork that we were using, but now in the digital, that's not so much necessary. And as a matter of fact, going onto a new set with all these new people, it's a new show and you don't know anybody, it's sort of reassuring to be able to use your own paperwork. Do you all agree with that?
Absolutely.
Yeah. I'd rather you come in confident to do the job than stressing out about, wait a minute, I put my camera roll number in this column, not that column, and you're spending the whole day focusing on that. It's not that important.
Exactly. Yeah. I'm also realizing I should introduce our panelists. I didn't do that. Rachel introduced herself. We also have Diane Newman from Louisiana, from New Orleans, right?
Yes. Yes.
Cool. And Diane, how long have you been working on Episodic?
Well, I've been a script supervisor for over 30 years. So I don't know, Episodic feature. I go back and forth between episodic and features. So I couldn't say how many, a long time. I've done multicam, I've done single cam, I've done features. I haven't done commercials. That's the one thing that I'm out of my depth on commercials.
That's good. And what are some of the shows that you've worked on, Diane?
I worked on a show that we cross-boarded called Quarry. I did the first season of True Detective, which was also cross-boarded. I did ER for a bit. I did Pushing Daisies for a bit. I've been in the Marvel world recently. I did WandaVision, and now I'm working on She-Hulk. And that's all, you know, streaming and episodic, and so yeah, so quite a bit of stuff. And multicam, I did Friends, and I did Veronica's Closet, and that was a different world, you know, the multicam, different animal altogether. So.
Yes, that would be another interesting seminar one day. And Katherine is from Atlanta, right?
Yes, I am.
Okay, and tell us a little bit too.
I started out doing commercials actually 30 years ago, which were great when you have small children at home and you're not taken away from your children that much. So it worked out well. It was nice to go to set and be away from your children. But I do also episodic now. Well, now I don't do commercials at all because I don't get called anymore because I'm never available. But I do features. I'm on a feature right now, but I do episodic. It seems to kind of split up one and one a year. Some of the episodic I did was Necessary Roughness, Drop Dead Diva. I did a lot, not a lot. I did some Tyler Perry stuff, which is a whole different creature of everything. Heels. One of the funnest shows I ever worked on was Good Eats. I don't know if anybody's familiar with that. It's a cooking show, and it was really a blast to work on because you also got to play characters, and they dressed you up as an opera lady, and you'd be an opera lady for that episode. So that was a lot of fun. As far when one of the great things about episodic is it gives you a lot of work for a long time. You get a real chunk of work, and then you can take a little break. And something that if they let you do this, that I have found to be really helpful for doing episodic, especially if it's a 5-month run and you know the producers well, is see if you can get an episode off. Particularly if it's each is a contained episode. Is the word I'm looking for. Anyway, if you can get an episode off somewhere in the middle, and if you can arrange to have it be the episode that has 2 weekends bracketing it, and you just take a break, you can come back very refreshed, and it's really helpful. And particularly if it's been your second uniperson all along, they come in and do an episode for you. It's 5 months, right somewhere in the middle, get a break. It's wonderful. And I suggest everybody try that if they decide to do episodic all the time.
Alternating is pretty great too.
I've never done that.
Yeah, I've been alternating now for a few shows, and Rachel too, don't you?
I do, yeah, on some of them. And as we were talking about before, that is where communication is the best between everybody.
Yes, alternating is great because you don't get so exhausted, and then you're the instant go-to person, or your alternating script supervisor is the instant go-to person if you suddenly are not well one day, or if there's a tandem unit, they know the show, they know the crew. So it's like a very smooth transition. And yeah, again, as Rachel said, communication is the key thing. And Cynthia has been doing TV for many, many years. Talk a little about yourself too, Cynthia. You did the first seminar, God, how many years ago was that?
I really don't know. No, I started out in kind of low budget features and I kind of fell into Law and Order, which I was there for 13 seasons, which is probably a little too long. And after Law and Order, partly lifestyle, my husband and I adopted a little girl, and I started alternating, and I worked with Diane on a forgettable show called Unforgettable. And Rachel I worked on Dietland with, and I I've just been kind of trying not to stay in a show for too long because I was in Law and Order for so long, and I want something interesting. And I've done recently The Loudest Voice and For Life and Dr. Death. And I really prefer alternating. Absolutely. It's kind of sometimes hard to find someone whose schedule lines up with yours.
Mhm.
So
Great.
that's
Yeah.
sometimes it's also a challenge to get the producer to realize it's a good idea.
My selling point, though, for it being a good idea is the whole thing about, well, for a tandem unit, you've got your built-in person. You don't have to go hunting around for somebody to be available.
Yeah.
Mm.
And now also, since we're trying to establish that people shouldn't be working on the weekends for no money,
Yes.
it probably could be cheaper for them to not be paying a Saturday or extra. I believe, Diane, you said you get 2 hours of wrap a night. Does that include, you said it in a previous seminar, and maybe it was for only one job, but Diane Newman?
Okay. Oh, when I cross-border, yeah, I would get,
Cross-boarding.
right, so,
So any paperwork or extra,
right,
but it's not for prep.
right, no, not for prep, just for wrap, every day, every night wrap. Just, I would get extra time for cross-boarding. I had to negotiate that, obviously, but yeah.
For the purposes of the people here who don't know, should Diane Hounsel, do you want to talk about what cross-boarding actually is in episodic?
Yeah.
Let's do that. Cross-boarding is when you're shooting several episodes at the same time. So it's like doing a feature, basically a 5-month feature. And one day on the call sheet, you might see scenes from episode 4 and episode 6 and something from episode 2, and you still got to keep track of all of that. Yeah.
I was just going to add to what I tell someone coming in. One major thing is just like, there are so many new things that they're going to be involved with, but there are like 1 or 2 landmines, like you must watch out for this and that. Like, this actress is so good with continuity. If this other actor is in the scene with her and it's very confusing, watch that other actor because he never repeats what he does or never says the right thing or something like that. Or how the director might prefer you to be next to him at all times, or he gets really nervous and irritable, or just be back at the monitor. He doesn't want you near him or something like that. Just the personalities of people. Correct them after the rehearsal, or maybe they don't want to be corrected till after the first take in dialogue, something like that. So I write that all down. So I would hope that the person that's filling in for me will look at that. It would really help them and everyone else as well.
I'll piggyback on what Cynthia said too, because I similarly, not only with the actors and the directors you're working with, but also all the departments. Oh, the prop department's fabulous. You don't have to worry about them. They'll take care of it. But wardrobe, keep an extra eye on them, or any combination thereof. I find that that's helpful to know for me coming in, and I like for people coming in for me just to know who they can rely on and who they might need to pay a little more attention to.
Sorry. That's my train of thought. I think another good thing to either ask or to ask about if you're going to do a day play, or to warn your day player of is it a night shoot? Are you going to be doing all exteriors, especially if it's in the winter or the summer? Are you going to be shooting in the woods or the beach or something like that? Give them a little heads up as to what kind of a situation they're getting into.
Yeah, I think it's really not fair to, I often let production handle who to call for a second unit, partly because I'm just really busy, and it's if the town's busy right then, it's really it's very time consuming. So I let production handle it after I've given a few suggestions. But I do think if I am personally calling somebody, and I hope production does do this, that they, before they ask me if they're available, they say it's a night shoot, because it's and it's, by the way, it's 50 miles away. And, because it's just not fair to somebody to ask them to do something. They say yes, and then they find out the circumstances. And they're like, well, I don't know that I would have taken that knowing, had I known that. So yes, I think it's very good to be upfront, let them know it's gonna be a shit show if it is, and be forewarned.
Yeah.
And I hope Alicia agrees with me that I try to warn people, and Lisa, that I try to warn people.
Yep, and you made me think of a couple times driving to Noonan.
Yeah, right, right. And right, actually in Atlanta right now, we seem to be doing a lot of shows that are way out of town. They've adopted this part of the city that's, well, it's not in the city, but it's like you're just driving forever to get there, and a lot of miles.
Wow. Another thing I found that's helpful to for the key script supervisor is somebody just once did this for me, and I thought, this is genius. This is saving the script supervisor a lot of time from having to repeat this over and over again for every tandem person that comes in. She sent me a document that had what's the hourly rate for that contract, what's the kit, what's the deal with her camera bumps, what's the wrap time, and like the others were saying, like, look out for this actor who never remembers his lines, or just like the whole gamut of things, like the general information of the show. And that way, if you've got a document ahead of time, you can just like shoot an email to your day player and not have to answer all these questions in texts, because you've taken care of it already. And then maybe just do a second document for like what's specific to the episode they're going to be covering. And it saves you a lot of time that way as well. Let's see.
One thing I don't think we've quite addressed is that, at least I think this is true, that the second unit or tandem unit, whatever you want to call it, splinter, sometimes it's even, they have a really hard job. Sometimes it's harder it's harder to come in on one day and get thrown all this information and expected to do a good job than it is to be the regular script supervisor. I really appreciate a good second unit script supervisor, and how hard their job is, because they're not always working on all the information they could have. But I'm going to do that from now on too, is do that, have a prepared list ahead of time with all that information.
And then another thing is, how many times have I gone for, to fill in for somebody or second unit, and I'm desperately like trying to get in touch with the office and like, do we have a prelim yet? Where am I working tomorrow? What time
Right.
the call time is going to be? Is it going to be 8 a.m. or 2 p.m.? I don't know. So another thing that I like to do for people that come in is, as soon as I get a prelim emailed to me, I'll forward it to that person. And I also will not trust the office. They might have them on the distro list, if but still, just in case, I'm going to forward that call sheet to my person who's coming in the next day, just in case, because I know how I've felt desperate to find out that information ahead of time. So,
Right, because you're not sure if you've just been overlooked. You don't want to pester the office for it, but
yeah. I mean, and people are busy. Like sometimes maybe the script supervisor, hasn't had a chance yet to give your information to the office, and they haven't sent it to you yet. Or maybe somebody in the office dropped the ball, or production hired you.
It's a whole lot of information, and is the key, as Diane's saying, like, and then, Catherine, everyone, we do try to share as much information ahead of time, but there's a certain extent to which someone coming in is always going to be at a deficit, as Catherine alluded to. And I would say, just to add a little levity, but I'm serious about this as well, an attitude, your good attitude coming in, knowing that, I mean, the crew knows you're a day player, you're new on this set. You can't be expected to have every answer readily at your fingertips. But if you come in with a great attitude, that will be remembered and you will be very likely asked back. You know, you try hard, but you know, can-do attitude will get you everywhere.
Absolutely. It's really, yeah, day playing is definitely a stepping stone to get into doing more and more episodic. Like any other, like when you first started doing your, you know, indie features, the more you did, the more people got to know your name and the more you started to get called. So it's the same with episodic. Let's see. And also, yeah, good attitude as far as, I mean, this was something that was brought up at that first seminar many years ago. It was like, don't go onto set saying like, oh, this isn't how we do it on my show. You're on a different show. Every show is different and you're the guest on this show. You can sort of, you know, maybe if you have an idea of, for like, oh, did you want to get this shot? You can just maybe say like, oh, I don't know how you usually do things on this show or what, you know, if this is the kind of thing you normally would do, but did you want to get, you know, an insert of the phone or do you not do that? So bring your ideas, but bring them a little carefully or humbly or something. Don't bring attitude with you.
One thing I'd like to mention, particularly when you're cross-boarding, it can be very difficult to keep you, well, make sure you have a really good system once you get your own show to keep track of every eighth of a page that has been shot or not been shot. And depending upon the show, sometimes it's a bigger issue on some shows and other shows, but some shows, the accounting department is getting involved in the eighths of the pages. And if you're not right on track, you can spend a lot of time tracking down a missing eighth of the page someplace. So I've finally got a good Excel system where I track it up, track everything, and like balancing your checkbook. It balances up against another form so that every day I make sure that everything is exactly how it should be, because if you do make a mistake someplace, you want to find it out that day. Because you don't want to go back, 10 reports to try to figure out where you've lost that page or scene or whatever, or eighth of a page. And some departments can come down really hard on those eighths of the page. And sometimes, and this hasn't happened in a while because I do have a better system now, you can find at the end that you are off on your pages. And I know this doesn't even seem like it should relate to our job at all, but it does. But you can be off on your pages and you can just fudge it at the end. You just call that, just ask the second AD, make sure that that's 3/8 of a page we claim on that thing because that's all I got left, or whatever. But if you can come up with a good system that works for you to keep track of everything, and also so when they ask you how much more do we have left in this episode, you know the exact right answer. That's, I would just
Quick
stress that. It's just crazy how they can go.
It's true. I one time had an accountant call me into the office to say, where's this eighth of the page? I'm like, I don't know. I don't know. And they demanded that I find it. I mean, because for them, you don't realize who all is looking at your paperwork. For them, it was about the hot costs. And it meant if there was more to shoot, how much more was that going to cost? Did we owe part of the scene that was going to take another half a day or something? So
This
yeah.
is my dumb question, but in those instances, are yours always in sync with the ADs? Because say you credited 4/8 and the AD credited 6/8, and then you didn't know if there were 2 parts or 1 part left. on shows where the accounting is going to get in touch with you, are they looking at both yours and the ADs or what?
Well, the ADs should go by what you tell them. I mean, so you're telling them we're only taking 3/8 of the page left. Like sometimes there's a scene that's 1/8 of the page, but there's 6 parts and you can't take 6/8. You can say, I'm sorry, we're not taking any page credit for this today because there is none to take. Or, we've already, and a lot of times on report, if there's, I'll put additional coverage, we shot this, no page credit, no scene credit, additional coverage, scene and page credit previously taken. So anyway, the AD department, to answer your question, absolutely goes by what you say we're taking for that, because they'll just keep taking 1/8 of the page all day long,
And you would do that based off the one-liner, or you just check the prelim and give them a heads up, or?
Check the prelim.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Check the prelim, but also how many times have you guys sent your revised breakdown with the new page count to the second AD and then see that they've not used that updated page count on
Yeah.
the call sheet?
Yeah.
So, and then you have to write in your notes, discrepancy between my page count and call sheet page count.
Right.
So,
Right. So when we get on the second unit person to really be accurate with what we're giving them for page counts, it really matters. So if they don't shoot something, you can't take that page credit. And it sounds like a silly thing to get all, come down on, but we get people coming down on us, like, Diane was saying, literally the accountants, the accounting department.
right. How many of you prep your daily report for your
Yeah.
yeah.
I do. Yep.
Yeah, I've had that done for me, but yeah, sometimes I do, sometimes.
I mean, I send the
Oh,
information because not everyone's using my forms. I'm super old school and still pen and paper. So I provide that information, but not necessarily
Exactly. Yeah, I'll do that too. I'll just say, this is what the expected page count is to be. Unless you
Right.
Yeah.
I'd like to ask Rachel a question. Do you type it then, or is it handwritten that you hand in?
I often include it all in an email with all the pertinent notes for the day. What I recently was asked to do, which I might start doing just moving forward, is send a scan of my daily report from the day prior. So they have all of that information at hand as I turned it in to then roll into their own paperwork as needed.
That's a great idea, Rachel. Because that answers a lot of questions without having to say words and check them. Yeah. Let's see.
I'll be back.
Okay. Shall we, let's see, is there something else about to cover? So do we want to start talking about prepping episodic? A lot of episodic scripts are broken into acts. That is, we're realizing, is more for network because that allows for commercials in between. And so you have to think in terms of those act breaks. Cable and streaming, that's not an issue. They don't have the act breaks. But if you're working for network, you have to think in terms of the act breaks. You have to remind your director, the scene is an act out, or the scene is an act open. Did you want to get that close up of something, or are you going to end the scene in some big wide crane shot, or, just remind them that it's an act out. And another big thing is like all of the revisions that we get. I mean, when you're starting, sometimes some shows will maybe send you like a studio draft or a pre-pro before the shooting draft, but sometimes you're going to find yourself getting a writer's draft, a network draft, a studio draft, a pre-pro draft, the white, the blue, the pink, the green, the yellow, goldenrod.
Some shows will make up colors. I was on a show where we had all sorts of violet, neon raspberry, puce.
Yeah.
It's fun.
salmon, cherry, lavender, and eventually they get to second white and second blue, depending. But also, if you're prepping, talk about how many timings you're going to have to do, what timing, which draft are you going to be expected to finally do that timing on? Because if you have to retime all of these drafts, it takes up so much of your prep time. Do you guys want to talk about that?
I make sure up to the first day of shooting, I make sure I've got a really good timing for whatever the last draft was before the day before we start shooting. So if it's whatever color it is. And usually you can figure out pretty much on a show how many drafts are going to go through. Some shows are better than others, but some shows, every day they're coming out with a new draft. And a lot of times it's very insignificant and you just wish they wouldn't, it completely could have been done on set, changing a line instead of, putting out a full script. But there is a point at which I will stop timing them. And that's, I kind of lock in on the time. And if it's a little bit different, or even the page counts, unless the scene is significantly shorter or longer, I'll stick with it. If it's an eighth of a page difference from 2 pages to 1 7/8, I'll just stick with whatever it was, because at that point I've got other things to do, and I can't be doing this every day, putting out new copies of, sending out new page counts and timings and stuff. That's how I do it.
And less math to potentially making mistakes.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, on some shows I've had a producer that it barely got through the email and is in my inbox, and he's saying, "What's the timing for the script?" And I was like, "I haven't even read it yet."
Yeah.
And other shows I've been able to sort of wait and do the timing pretty late on in my prep, so I don't have to keep doing it over and over again. And they've been okay with that. They've been okay with waiting until one of the last couple of days before. I think they realize that they're saving on me going over on my prep time by letting me do that. And also because of all of these revisions, if you're used to doing features with a more elaborate breakdown, you might need to find a way of streamlining your episodic breakdown, because with all of these revisions, it's just too much to keep up with. So, and as I think Catherine was saying, prepping on the weekend, or Cynthia maybe, be sure you charge for that 6th day. If you're doing every episode and the only time you have to prep is on a Saturday or a Sunday, make sure you put that down in your time card for a 6th day. As opposed to a separate time card at straight time or something like that. And for some shows, the timings are very sensitive. I think, Cynthia, one of the points that you brought up when we did this the first time was how important to get the timing right was.
Yeah, it differs on, I would say network, it's more crucial because they have an exact amount of airtime, and cable, I mean, it's even gone over an hour. Sometimes they'll air something longer. So, I mean, when I first started out, if anyone's just starting out, and I got a show, I did the timings, and for a couple of episodes I watched, a month later, it's fresh in your mind and you watch it on TV, and I compared my timings to what was edited to see their style of how closely they edit, how tightly, and that really helped me be very accurate. But also, when you get onto set, I find, especially in network where you're really limited as far as time, to, some directors will ask all the time, how are we doing on time? But some forget, but there might be an actor, there might be a really long courtroom scene that I have at 3.5 minutes and it's now running 5.5 minutes. And, I just have to say, notify them right away, even rehearsal. This is really much longer. Do you like this pace? If they try to say they want to cut air out of it, maybe the actor is doing a long, slow walk across a diagonal and he's talking very slowly and you're like, you can't really cut out chunks of that because he's going to jump from here to there. So, your timing might, don't feel bad. You can't predict, you're not a psychic. You can't predict how big the room's going to be, if the actor had coffee before, but if something is wildly different when you're shooting, you need to let the director know. You can't force them. Just, do you like this pace? This is, I imagined a much quicker pace because of such and such screen direction or something like that.
Right.
Right. And also if something's, 4/8 of a page and it's a 1.5 minutes, and you can, just based on that, you can say, you can't have every 4/8 of a page be a 1.5 minutes, or obviously your episode's way over long. And Alicia asked a question, timing is separate from your prep. And no matter what they try to tell you, you get a separate paycheck for your timing, whatever you can figure out. But it does not include it in your prep. And when they try to include it in my prep, I'll say, I'm sorry, I really just can't do that. It's a union thing. I don't know if it really is, but anyway, I just refuse. And I give on a lot of things too, I feel like. Although on the show I'm on right now, I did get an extra $40 for the third camera a day. So just trying to get that into their head that it's not, that when you have extra cameras, it still shouldn't be just the 2-camera bump, and the timing is really a tough thing because it's very political, depending on whether the director wants to know or the producers want to know, because they have different agendas. The directors want to shoot everything and the producers want to shoot less than everything. So it's very political, and so you really want to be right, because if they're going to cut scenes based on your timing and then you come up short, that is not good. And vice versa. If you say, no, yeah, we're good, and they shoot everything and they got on a network show, they got 60 minutes. People are not going to be happy about that either, if you haven't been warning them all along. So it's a touchy subject.
It's good also to ask at the beginning of the show, ask the producers, like, what's the timing that you're aiming for this particular show? What does the studio want? What are you hoping that this is going to time at? To kind of have a rough idea in your head. And then also for the episodes that are for network that have these act outs, allow in your timing that extra moment for the close up, for the moment that's really dramatic, or the big wide frame at the end. That's always going to add a few seconds. So keep those in mind.
Right. And your timing isn't necessarily how, I hope everybody knows this, but maybe not, that it's not when they, say action to cut. There's a lot of stuff in there that you might say, well, okay, we're not going to use those, we're going to get out of there sooner or later, or like Diane was just saying, we're going to, hang on that for a while. And if there is air, say a scene times out to, for all the action, it was 3:20, but that they're going to cut out a lot of stuff. I won't put that, I might put, 2:40 or whatever in my, as how long the scene actually was, so that you don't have you're not saying, oh, this show's timing out long, just because you can't time every moment that the camera's rolling. You have to sort of figure out, you have to kind of cut it in your head a little bit, what they're not going to use. So you have a pretty accurate timing of that scene. Because I know sometimes I have gotten things from second unit script supervisors where I'm thinking, well, I know that didn't take 5 minutes. Maybe the camera was rolling 5 minutes, but you know, that's not how long that could have been. So you got to kind of use your judgment a little bit or a lot.
Right. Sean is asking, he says he's curious if anyone sends the UPM a rough schedule of when you may have timings and breakdowns available when you're the only script supervisor.
I don't, but what I will say is I will not distribute any breakdowns or timings until we've hit at least the production draft. If they want something prior to that, I'm happy to do it. We can negotiate that, but I will not until it goes by to the crew and this is the script we're going to shoot. That's when I'll do it. So in terms of giving a schedule, that's as close to giving a schedule as I'm willing to do. I'm not going to say, oh, by Thursday at 4 p.m., I'll have this turned in. I want to give myself a little wiggle room there.
Mhm. And Ariel asks, how many main unit script supervisors have negotiated prep time for your day players and what is it? An hour added to the end of the day, question mark?
Mm.
I try. I've asked. Good at asking.
I feel like I want to ask the people who've day played for me what it ended up being. Because I know I've asked for prep and then it usually goes into, great, we'll negotiate the prep with the day player.
Right. When I've day played, I find it usually takes me 45 minutes to an hour to read a script. And I've just somehow tried to add that into the end of my day with my wrap time. So if I finish, I don't know, wrapping in 20 minutes, I'll figure like, okay, I guess that's the time I spent reading the script. But I think now we're more aware of trying to ask for that prep time and for ourselves and for our second unit people. What do you all also think?
Yeah, the reason I asked is because I didn't do it at the beginning of the shoot that I'm on. And then when I tried to revisit it, it was like, you know, a touchy subject. So that's the lesson I learned, that as I go into my next season of something, I want to try to make it more of a blanket rule that I set up front than being like, well, he's coming in on a day where there is a lot of continuity. He's going to have to read the script, plus read all my matching notes, which are extensive, maybe get the dailies. And, you know, that's what I learned, that I don't want to have to do it the week leading up and get pushed back, or, hey, have them say, oh, let them fend for themselves if they have an issue, because that just, it was weird.
I think it's valuable to ask for that prep time for the person coming in, because like I said before, if they can read that script, maybe they'll catch something that's really important. So, okay. I've got a couple of people here saying that somebody who works on Evil negotiated an hour for her day players. Sharon Watt also negotiates for that, for herself and for day players. Okay. Larry's asked, does anyone know if there are specific union rules regarding pre-times in relation to prep days? Larry,
Sorry, what was that question?
Larry, maybe speak up. What do you mean? Pre-timing, or where's Larry?
We covered that. I think he asked if timing, it's part of prep.
Oh, if it's part of the prep, yeah.
Catherine had mentioned that she's demands separate prep time for pre-timing. She won't bundle it in with whatever prep days she's negotiated. So I just wanted, and she said it's union rules, but she might be fibbing. She doesn't know what the actual union rules are regarding that. Are there specific union rules relative to what one can ask for pre-time versus, and how it bundles into your regular prep days for the same shoot?
Right. I wonder if that's as per the contract. I wonder What contractor are you working on under, Catherine? You do that?
Right now, I'm working under Major's contract. No, when I said, when they asked me to, if the timing's part of my prep, I just pretty much, I say, no, it's not. It's just the way it's done. And I feel like I would be letting down the union if I were to say, and my fellow script supervisor, if I were to include that in, and they'd start getting that idea that that's included in. So it's a non-negotiable for me. And when I said, it's just part of the union rules, I don't know that it is or not, but that's what I will tell them. I'll say, that's just what my union asked me to do. So that's what I do. And I'm sorry, I cannot include timing with prep, period.
I'm the same, Catherine. I'm the exact same. Yeah.
So I don't know that it's part of any union rules. It's just what I've been told the way we should do it. So I go by that one.
Right. One thing that I do is I always try to leave the door open with my prep time because we'll negotiate, okay, you get 2 days at 10 hours a day or whatever we negotiate. And I'll say, just in case this happens to be one of those shows where there's lots of revisions and I have a lot of revisions to go over in prep and I have to do retimings and revising my breakdown. If it goes over that 20 hours or whatever we've agreed on, I just want to, make sure it's okay. And, as long as I give you a heads up, maybe it'll take me 22 hours or 23 hours or 24 hours. I just want to let you know, it might sometimes, some shows, sometimes it takes a little more than my usual allotted prep time. And so for most of the time, I've been getting, they've agreed to that. They understand because they see all the revisions that come too.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Can each panels talk about prep? How much time do they get before shooting? How do they prep during shooting? Is prep on 6 days?
Well, for me, for the Marvel show that I'm on right now, I had to prep all 9 episodes. So it was just, it was 2 months of prep for me. Just, because I knew that we were going to cross board, and it's 2 different directors. One director is doing 6 episodes and one director is doing 3 episodes. And so we're doing the first directors all 6 episodes first and then coming in with the other 3. So, I mean, it's not continuous. It's one director's doing 1, 2, 3, 7, 8, 9, and then the other director's doing 4, 5, and 6. So that was the, the puzzle pieces that I had to, I really had to know the script very, very well. All of them very well, because we could do 5 episodes in one day. So it's not really like a set thing that's determined by how many episodes it is, because it's the cross-boarding. It's almost like shooting a movie, really, I guess. So.
But I would say typically I expect 2 days per episode. Maybe a 10-hour day. A lot of times they try to make it an 8-hour day, and I tried not to make it an 8-hour day because you're doing it all on your overtime hours essentially. So, they shouldn't be straight 8 hours. So yeah, so the 2 days. Some shows only give 1, but generally most shows I think give 2 days prep plus your timing.
Yeah, I do 2 10-hour days for both 1 hour and half-hour shows. That's just what my deal is. Prep during shooting, it does depend. If I'm alternating, it's not that hard. I can do it in the week prior, whenever the script comes out. But yeah, prep does happen on 6 days, and you just bill accordingly. I've been doing it.
Okay.
You get some, it sounds like some of you get all of your scripts in advance. I've dealt with situations where not all the scripts are ready before we start shooting. So then I have to prep as we're shooting.
Yeah, that happens. Yeah, that's a thing. Yeah.
I feel like
Yeah, or
that's,
sometimes you don't even get your script and you've already started shooting and they're just giving you scenes.
Yeah.
You know, particularly towards the end of the season, you know, like you're just getting a scene here and there.
Yep.
Yeah, and you don't even know where it's going to fit in that
Yeah.
script. You haven't gotten yet. Yeah, it's true. Catherine, when we were talking about preparing to do this, is Catherine here? Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Oh, sorry. You were talking about maybe sending a sample of your paperwork to your day player to let them know what is expected. And you were talking also about how they should label their files, their script notes to send when they're sending them.
Yes, so I would say particularly on some shows when there's a lot of, they're doing a lot of scenes. They're, you know, all over the map with episodes. They're shooting 4 different episodes in one day. And is I like to have them labeled so that I can easily identify what the file is without opening the file. So I know, so if I'm looking for a file, I don't have to open it and see what it is to know where to put it. So if there's some way it can be labeled just right off the bat, scene 8, you know, episode 104, scene 8, lined pages or however, you know, so that, you know, how the whole title of something doesn't always fit into where, you know, it doesn't all show. So that's, I don't know what I'm trying to say, but so I can see it at a glance, what exactly it is I'm looking at and so I know where to put it and where to save it in my files.
And I imagine so that it's consistent with what you normally send to your post department.
Well, I'm really just talking about what I get sent by the script supervisor, which is what they're sending obviously to editorial.
Right.
So, and I would think the same for editorial, that they, you know, like to be able to see right off the bat what they're getting, so they know what bin they put it in. So in other words, don't make the file name so long that half of it gets cut off.
Right.
If that makes sense.
I mean, I feel like if your key script supervisor gives you an outline of how they want the paperwork back, I would suggest doing your best to follow that, because I will tell you, the people who send me back what I ask for, they come back a lot. If they don't, you may have been fabulous, but you know what? It's made my job a little harder. You may not be my first call next time.
Yeah.
Right, because we're fitting all these pages into our script,
Right.
you know, which is real pain in the ass.
Right.
You know, I mean, I like shows where we don't have to have a second unit script supervisor, because it's just easier for me to do it all, really. It's really, you know, and particularly when we're using different formats and fitting the pages back in, and then there's revisions and you got to transfer all your notes onto a different script. I mean, it can be very time consuming, fiddly work, you know?
I like paper.
Yeah, absolutely. Paper was much easier for that. And you just give them a notebook, and that was your handoff, was handing them the notebook.
I have to say, Catherine, so because we talked about that before when we were like discussing doing this seminar, I day played for somebody, and because you said that, I asked them, oh, how would you like me to title these documents? And she was like, wow, thanks for asking. She was just like taken aback and just so pleased. So I thought,
Okay.
Catherine had a really good point there. Thank you. Thank you for that. Yeah. And oh yes, and so also that document with like to send all the basic information to your day player. I forgot to mention, like, give them the contact information of your paperwork PA, their phone number, who they're going to text their lunch report to, who all do they have to email their notes at the end of the day to. You know, have all of those phone numbers and email addresses in there in a way that's easy, just to kind of cut and paste those email addresses into what they're going to be emailing.
What I like to do, if I remember to do it, is the day prior to that script supervisor coming out, is put them on my distro, so that all they have to do is forward all, and they don't have to do anything.
Brilliant. Yes, that's great. Great idea. See, we all learn something new all the time.
I don't always remember.
Okay. Okay, so a day on set. What do you, let's see. I think we all can agree that things kind of work faster on set. Like you're in, rehearsal's up right away, right? It's not like on a feature where everybody's still getting their coffee. Another very important thing is to remember to put the episode number on the slate, especially if you're doing several different episodes in a day. Have it on all of your paperwork. The episode number is very important for that. And also it's very helpful to put tandem unit or insert unit on all of your paperwork to distinguish. Ask the key script supervisor if they want you to put an X before all of the scene numbers for your second unit work. Make sure you have the latest draft. And then if it's some new draft that's just come out this morning, make sure the actors got it. How many times have we gone into rehearsal and the actors are saying lines from a previous draft and they didn't get their email or read their email and see that a new draft came out. And
To piggyback on that, Diane, I'll also say check the sides because sometimes they don't update them in the morning if a revisions come in late. So sometimes you might be the only one on set, like you and maybe the director, who have the accurate pages.
exactly. Mhm. And sometimes there's a page missing out of the sides. Like the end of the scene is not in there. And I'm like, hey, what happened to this? And everybody's like, what are you talking about? And I can just show
Or
it.
sometimes you have forgotten that you had an update on that and you did not put that page in, or somehow you missed it when you were putting pages in. So I like to check the sides to my, because somebody's wrong and we better find out who, you know, it might be me, it might be them, but to make sure that we are literally on the same page, you know,
Exactly. That's right.
who's ever in, you know, in error.
Mhm. Yeah, and in these days, multiple cameras is the norm. It's like minimum 2 cameras. More often 3 cameras are quite common on episodic. Sometimes there's even 4 cameras. Sometimes they hide all these GoPros all over the place that you barely even know about.
Or use an iPhone
Or you
for, you know, for somebody that's, you know, they're photographing a TikTok, so they're literally going to use an iPhone to do it, and that has to be included in the camera, you know, what cameras you use at the end of the day.
Mhm.
So
Exactly. Yeah. But all of those cameras, I mean, it's like adding to the workload that's becoming more and more the norm. You know.
Make those camera assistants your friends.
Yes.
Get the intel from them. And speaking of multiple cameras, one thing that has come up with in my world a few times is to really make sure you're notating within a setup. If you're running 4 cameras in the setup and by take 3, you're only going again on B and C cameras and A and D are standing down, make sure you note that because it creates a whole flurry in post-production where they're looking for missing takes the next day. So if you're a day player, you know, really be on top of that. And if you're taking on episodic, I mean, that's something really to be mindful of.
Absolutely. And all of the keep it rolling, go back to this line and keep it going and keep it going. Mark down when they're resetting, mark down what line they're going back to. If it's incomplete, mark down where it got incomplete. You know, reset to line 5, reset to line 7, flub at line 8, reset to line 5. You know, it can just be like reset.
Yeah, I feel like everyone here is seasoned and has some experience, but if you're not, I think it is worth mentioning because Diane's like kind of referencing reset to line 5. Number the lines of dialogue in your scene so you have a quick reference to get back to. I feel like that's basic, but worth covering.
That's true. Yeah, you'll find that maybe they'll just do a couple of takes, moving on, go in tighter. You know, either, and with 3 cameras, like I've had directors that do 1 take and then they say, great, okay, everybody go tighter now. And like you're barely drawing your lines and you suddenly got to get ready there for the next setup already. Like I said, it moves very fast. Lots of coverage, lots of cutaways. Sometimes they tag the phone, if you don't know that term. It's just, you know, swingles, like think of The Office where they're just floating back and forth. And sometimes they'll leave inserts for an insert day. So, you know, take photographs for reference for that.
Right, and make lists of what's going to be needed of inserts they haven't covered. Also, I would say when sometimes they send C camera off to do something, and they're not just leapfrogging; they're literally shooting simultaneously C camera something else, you know, 100 feet away, you know, MOS probably. But I try to have the second AC do as little slating as possible. Like, in other words, don't give them a new slate. Don't have A, B, C, D when first of all, when they're on a Zoom and they're just a little bit tighter. But second of all, oh, well, we changed the lighting, so I put a new slate on it. I'm like, don't, just keep it simple. You know, it's kind of not my problem too much. I mean, I want to record what they got, but I can't be recording that they had, you know, 12 takes and 8 setups, you know, 12, you know, 12, every setup, every take can't be a new setup. Just series it, because it's just way too much more for me to do at the end of the day.
Totally.
I also note on that, rolled without Script Supervisor.
I do too.
I do too. I do too.
I do too. I put it that, and on the camera report, I put it not present on the camera report, just so they know. Yeah.
Absolutely. Have you guys been doing a lot of Zoe log for camera reports? What have you guys been doing on your shows?
I did it on one show and I liked it a lot. But after I did on that one show and I tried to take it with me to like the next show, they're like, oh no, we're not doing that. I'm like, okay. So it's like, I'm just back to paper, and it's hard getting people to do something that they don't know about, or they're, you know, so I'm like, whatever, I can do either one, Zoe log or paper reports. I think COVID was a big push for the Zoe log, and when I did it, it was before COVID. So,
except on my show, production didn't want to pay for anybody's subscription to it, so we still used paper.
Yeah, it's always.
Go ahead.
No, just saying, it's always money. Money drives everything. It's always money.
I've actually spoken to the developer of Zoe log about coming up with a payment plan that productions can buy a license. That would make it a lot easier, because we've had a problem with using it in the camera department, but day players don't have it, like in the camera. So yeah, I've talked to her about doing that. It'd be better.
That's good, Sean. That's good.
I was just going to say more about dealing with those. You're jumping into a job, or maybe you're just starting your first show, dealing with those multiple cameras. And one thing is you don't have to reslate if D camera is the only one changing its shot.
Right.
Just for take 3, D is whatever, close up is closer or something, you know, because you're going to have crazy lines all over your page. You won't be able to keep up. And the other thing is, if you feel you're really getting behind sometime, I mean, one time I just realized I just have to take a shot of the quad split screen because I can't even take any notes. We're moving so fast. And at the end of the night, I'm going to wonder what Charlie was and what Denver was. And when you're really panicking, just come up with something like that.
Right.
There are a lot of little tricks, or just write little diagrams or notes, whatever, on a separate clipboard or a little memo pad or something.
Hi,
And then you can catch up later.
hi, this is Veronica. I only change scene number or shot number if a camera changes position. Otherwise, I keep the same and do notes as you said.
Mhm. And if they're just resetting and keeping it rolling and they're just doing a reset and they're zooming in to get that tighter shot and they haven't cut the camera, I'll just write, reset, zoom in on B camera now. A's may be the same or whatever. And I'll just like mark it in my notes with what happened. Oh, yes. There. Keeping up with camera reports. How many of you write down the camera info in your notes, and how many of you make sure the ACs write it on their camera reports so you don't have to?
Yeah, I do.
Mhm.
Lens, filters, focal length.
You do write it on in your notes still?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, well, because I use Movie Slate 8, it's just easy to input. It's just a little do.
Uh-huh.
So, and then it's all in the metadata, so it's very
Right.
easy to.
I'm pen and paper. I'm on Maisel, which often many of our shots end up turning into VFX shots when they weren't. So I've spoken at length with our VFX supervisor about what she wants on our quote unquote non-VFX shots. So those require a little less information, but it's all pertinent.
Some shows like Maisel have to be word perfect. Some shows, there's a lot of ad lib. Is there a certain way that you deal with the word perfect aspect?
It's the easiest. No, I joke a little bit, but I'm into season 4. I mean, our cast knows. They knew halfway through season 1 that this is just the deal. And in casting processes, they warn all the actors coming in that this is the deal. I'm in a unique situation, however, as we do have someone on set whose sole responsibility is to sit and look at the script and make sure the dialogue is correct and be on hand to run lines with actors at any point should we have someone come in who's maybe a little off book or struggling. But honestly, it's so easy because there's no debate anymore. It's like,
Right.
no, this is what you say. That's all it is.
And for me, I had an actor that just loved to ad lib because he felt like it helped him get into character and to find the scene and all of that. And he was just sort of riffing and in order to not get him stressed out, I had to kind of let him go and let him do his thing. But then at the end, when we were doing his close-ups, I had to make sure he was on book for the close-ups, at least for one of the takes, if nothing else. And many times I had to go up to him and say, please, for the showrunner, please just like on book for this one. So
I also find on super ad-libby shows, sorry, didn't mean to cut you off. I find I have to keep track of like, you guys are like, this is really funny right now, but you're so in left field. You might want to bring it back. Or, if a director's like, or showrunner, someone's like, I really love that joke about puppies that they did. Let's make sure we get that when we move into coverage. So I do find on shows where they ad-lib or they're very free to go to roam, I do find myself tracking things like that because at a certain point, it has to make sense. It's got to cut together. You don't want to joke about puppies with a punchline about kitties. Like, it just doesn't work.
Exactly.
Also, if there's an ad lib that's being repeated that everyone likes, sometimes you're in a different time period and you have to just listen. Would that slang word be said in this time period? Some people just don't tune into that. And so you would, just bring up something like that. It's like that isn't something, that slang word didn't exist yet. Or
exactly. And
No.
check with the writers, if they, you know, like they might love the ad lib and think that it's brilliant, or they might be like, no. So, you know, check with the writers. It's a luxury when they're there too, to be able to weigh in on that. Standards and practices for network. Keeping that in mind for, is there, you know, are there too many curses that are getting ad-libbed in there? Is there too much blood? How about the nudity? That's something that one has to keep in mind for a lot of the network shows.
Sometimes you sit with the script and count the 4-letter words in each category.
Mhm.
Just a fun little thing to do in prep.
Yep. Do you guys want to talk about communicating with the director at all? Any tips for that? You're the one who's holding the script. You're the one who has to like remind them of what's in that script so they don't forget. You know, maybe at the end of the scene, it's in the stage direction, somebody starts to make a phone call. Well, in the next scene, somebody's going to be answering that phone call. So you want to remember to get that shot of so-and-so starting his phone call, right? Transitions between scenes.
Yeah, you also have to, aside from the logistics of the transitions and stuff like that, and, you know, supervising the script, you also have to have, you have to know when you can approach the director, because if they're like in the middle of thinking out how they're going to give their note to the actor or for the scene or whatever, to the camera guy, whatever it is, and you come in like, you know, like, and you distract them, and it doesn't make for a good, you know, a good rapport with them, or, you know, it's just a timing. You have to know when to speak and when to not speak. And, you know, I found that's been, you know, and every director is different. Every person is different. So it's like, some can handle it, some do not, you know, and some are nice about it, some are not, you know, so but that's a key thing too, just when and how to approach the director.
Yeah,
Right.
also, you don't, I would ask first, do you want me to correct this line, or do you
Sure.
want to? Sometimes I have been asked to give corrections that I feel are more what a director,
Mhm.
and I've said, yeah, I think they're gonna want to hear that from you.
I've
maybe?
done the same. I've declined.
I
I'm like,
mean-
that's a director note, not a dialogue note or anything. I'm not
Yeah, I mean,
reading. Yeah.
one time we had a very old director who could barely get out of his chair, and I said, you know, director wants me to relay this message. That's the only time I've done that.
You know, sometimes a director seems to think that we are also their personal assistant. Like when they can't find their notebook or their glasses or something, maybe it's because, particularly if the director's a man, I think only if it's a man actually does this happen. But they look around like, I'm going to go start searching all over for the shit they lost, you know, and they do it all day long. And I'm like, yeah, I don't know where it is, you know, I mean. Or, by the way, on the other hand, I mean, sometimes you do have to do a little ego massage, and every once in a while it's nice to say, oh, good scene, you know, whether you think so or not, of just kind of, you know, part of the job sometimes. Maybe y'all don't agree, but, you know,
It's true.
you got to get along with that person. On the other hand, with episodic, they're only there for maybe 8, 9, 10 days. And it's not, you know, you can work well with anybody for that length of time, I would think. Yeah, so there's like little nuances to your behavior, I think, anyway. Maybe because I'm old enough woman to still think that way sometimes.
I'm the
That
same.
you know.
Yeah.
Mhm. I also find it helps the editor too. If I ask the director, you know, tell me specifics. Tell me if you like the beginning of one scene and the end of another scene. Do you know, is there a way, you know, tell me if you like the way they did a line read and see in take 3, whatever. And, you know, they're usually very pleased that I, you know, offered to do that for them. You know, because remember, a director's got like 4 days to edit. And nowadays they're often just doing it on Zoom. So all the notes that the editor can get from the director ahead of time, it just helps them do their rough cut ahead of time. So, and also you might find yourself speaking on behalf of the producers. Like, you know, we need to get a close-up of number 1. We always get a close-up of number 1. We can't not have a close-up of number 1 in this scene. Or, you know, that snap zoom is not the look of this show. We just never do that. So a lot of times you're the representative on set for the showrunner as to what this, you know, this director might want to be really innovative and creative, but they're doing something that is just not your show. And so you're the one who needs to speak up about that. And again, like we were talking in preparing for this, upholding your department. I mean, ultimately, it boils down to your main focus is the continuity. You know, is it going to cut together? Is it, you know, the details that you guys were bringing up before? Rachel was mentioning, which way did they exit the room? All of that. That's ultimately what it's all about.
One thing I wanted to mention is that a lot of times the director almost will only look at the A camera. So even though it's hard for you to pay attention to camera D, do pay attention to B, and I mean, see if you are getting those, you know, tagging things, or somebody's getting it tighter or something, because the director a lot of times literally only looks at the A camera and doesn't pay any attention to the other cameras. So
you can help yourself out there too, because there's nothing wrong with asking the director, like, well, what do you need C and D camera for? So that you know what moments to kind of throw an eye over those.
right.
Otherwise, I mean, 4 screens is a lot to watch.
Sure. Yeah, that's a good point, Rachel.
Mm-hmm. Right. And it's nice when a director tells you, like, I'm going to be crossing the line at this point, so that you know when you turn around on the other actor that you'll have to cross the line at the same point.
Right.
So, and that it's nice when they warn you so that you don't have to be like, uh-oh, we just crossed the line.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
bother them with something that they're like, yeah, it's okay, don't worry.
On the flip side too, you can always jump in and be like, that's cool, you want to cross the line here, but do you know that it means we're crossing the line on the other side? Are you sure you want to do that? Because that has come up.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then sometimes it's come up that they've had to shoot it both ways on both sides.
I worked with a DP once who loved crossing the line on the first side because he thought it was cool. And when we come to the other side, he'd turn to me and say, why did you let me cross the line? I hate crossing the line. I'm like, you know, we talked about this. You said you wanted to do it, and here we are. Let's do it.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Exactly. Oh my God. Yeah. Do you guys want to, let's see, anything else that you want to talk about on set? Do we want to move on to wrapping, or, you know, wrapping the end of the day? Daily reports and all of that. Let's see if we had any other
I feel like these days in the time of COVID, like wrapping at the end of the day, so much of it is really, like, we keep circling communication. It's talking to, you know, your key script supervisor, if you're a day player, how they want the paperwork collated and put together and sent out. And if you're starting a show, kind of determining, you know, talking to your post producers in the office and all of that, and how they want the information sent out. I've certainly worked on shows where like, oh great, here's a list, you send it all to these people. And other shows are like, oh no, we do the distro solely, you send it to this one point person and they'll take it from there. So those are all conversations to have up front.
Good. And I think some people might not realize how many people, I mentioned this, like I touched on it earlier, how many people read the notes in the reports. You know, your daily report, or your end of day report, or your top sheet, however you want to call it, goes to the paperwork PA to do the production report. It goes to the APC, it goes to the UPM, it goes to the showrunner, the accountant, the assistant editor. And sometimes it even goes to the studio in the network in LA. I think a lot of people are surprised how many people read all of their notes. The continuity log, it goes to the lab it gets compared with your camera reports for circle prints for dailies, which go to the studio and the director and the producers and to the assistant editors. They read the editor's log as well, so they can start digitizing everything. Your line script page goes to the editor. Of course, that's what they mostly work on with your script notes. And the assistant editor checks against it to see if all the setups have been lined. That lined script is a roadmap for your editor to see who was on camera, who was off camera. It gives him like at a quick glance, he can see what shots he wants to look at that covered a certain actor. Your script notes and your facing pages go to the editor also. They're looking for the circle takes, the director's comments, and they want to know if something was incomplete, where was it incomplete, why, was part of it good?
Something I like to do is get out my wrap report within 5 minutes of wrapping, because there's people, particularly on a Friday night, they're waiting in an office, waiting to get that. You can worry about the notes later, but sometimes I'll see, the second unit person maybe not having sent out a wrap report for an hour after they've wrapped. By the end of the day, pretty much the only thing I should have to fill in is wrap time, and that thing's ready to go out, because there's people that have been waiting, the AD department, they've been there forever. And they can't go until they get it.
Exactly.
So
and they're often in before anybody else.
And exactly, they have a long day.
Much longer day. That's right. I have texted a photograph of my top page and sent it to my paperwork PA and to the production secretary. And they're very appreciative of getting that right away, as soon as possible before I do finish the rest of my notes. So yeah.
Sometimes too, if I have like a lot of episodes that I have to do a different production report per episode, like 5 episodes, it's 5 PRs.
Yeah.
I tell the ADs, I'm like, look, I'm gonna be just a little bit longer tonight than I normally would be, because all this, or I'll give you these 4, and then I'm really bogged down on this. I'll just try to give them a heads up, so they're not like, hey, if they're used to me giving it to them right away. And I can say, tonight's going to be a little bit different, because I know where I am. I know, what I'm up against and what I can handle and how much I need to do to get it to them. So I try to give them a heads up.
And the UPM too, if it's going to
Yes.
be longer.
Yeah. Production office. Yeah.
Like 5 cameras,
Yeah.
and it was like crazy stunt scenes or
Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah.
It's not often, but it happens. So it's just.
Absolutely.
I also, if I absolutely know, if we're doing 4 episodes and we're absolutely done with these 2 episodes before lunch, I will.
You put them to bed.
I'll pre-text that to the
Yeah.
paperwork PA.
Same. Yeah, so they can get started on
And
it. So
if they add something later, I'll just let them know at the end of the night, this is revised.
Totally, same. And then, hey guys, I'm giving you this now. It doesn't have the wrap time on it, but this is all the information. I'm putting it to bed. I'm moving on to these other 2 episodes. So yeah. Same.
I really appreciate that, because it really gives them a jump on the work at the end of the day.
Yeah. Because they have 5 PRs to do too. So
Exactly. Laura Pinto's asking, can you explain wrap report for each episode? Well, if you're cross-boarding 5 different episodes, you have to do your daily report, your end of day report for each of those episodes.
Right, because each episode has its own scene count, page count, setup count, time count, and so forth. So
That's generally how it goes. I was fortunate enough to work on a show that cross-boarded 2 at a time and allowed us to do 1 set of paperwork for both episodes and kind of treat 2 episodes as one.
Mhm.
So there are variations, but typically speaking, when you cross-board, you are doing so many sets of paperwork.
Mhm. Absolutely. Right. Oh, and the gag reel. It's fun to mention the, if something happens crazy on set, put it in your notes. It's good for the gag reel. Yeah. So, okay. I think that's kind of all of my notes of what I sort of wanted us to cover, but do we want to open this up to some questions? Anybody? Does anybody want to talk about what they want to maybe hear from the day player at the end of the day about for when they come back to work the next day? What are they looking for from their day player to like keep them up to speed with? Or
I mean, for me, at the end of the day, I want the continuity. I'll double check the math. I'll double check all the crediting the next day just because that's what I do. But I really want to know, like, I do want to hear eventually, how did the day go? How did you feel? Did you feel supported? Did these people help you who said that they would? Like, I do want to know all that. But really, the first thing I look for is if I've said to you, you're doing a scene, like I said earlier, where someone's going through the door. And I know when I come in tomorrow, I'm picking up that person coming through the door on the other side. The first thing I'm going to look for is, did you give me the notes that I specifically asked for? Because they were important enough to me that I put it down, and it says a lot to me that you then have taken that seriously and been like, yes, let me deliver that, if that makes sense.
any other questions or comments? Okay, Sean was asking, since there's such a much faster pace on episodic, how do you handle a director who does way too many takes?
I mean, what are you going to say to a director? I mean, what are you going to say? What can you say?
Well, I do find myself saying, like, what are we looking for? What are we expecting to see now? Just because, when we put in so much time or we're punting scenes because we haven't made our day. I mean, I'm sure I speak for a lot of script supervisors. I hate leaving stuff on the table. That makes me crazy. So I was just curious how you deal with directors.
Usually an actor will speak up, like, well, what do you want different?
Right.
I mean, if it's really crazy, a producer comes down.
Yeah.
Someone else who outranks me will come down and deal with it.
I find that it's not my place whatsoever. Yeah. I'm there to record everything, and that's what I do.
Okay.
I have a similar, along the same line for more seasoned episodic people. My guest directors this season were a lot of new directors or theater directors or people who didn't know film that well. And I found myself being taken advantage of in terms of like, what should the coverage be? What do you feel? In a way that I was very gung-ho and flattered at the beginning and then exhausted by the end of the episode because I had been the second set of ears and eyes for coverage in a way that I felt taken advantage of, and that it was more the DP and them to work out. So I don't know, throwing it out there, how have you guys dealt with that in a tactful way that preserved yourself, or where do you guys feel the line is?
I haven't really been in that position except once, to the extreme where a director directed himself into a corner basically, and the sun was coming up and he said, design this shot and make it work. And I was just so angry. Everybody hated this guy. And I said, well, there's no way I'm directing for him. And I just said one thing. I said, all you need is a reason for someone to come out to the, I gave him the solution basically, but he had to design it. I was just, everyone had it.
Got it.
But yeah, not design. Yeah. I mean, yes, you want to make sure there's enough coverage, but I don't know about designing every shot.
Yeah, it was less designing shots and more just like, do you think we need this? We split the look in this way. Do we want to get it on both sides this way? And it happened more than once with more than one director. But the thing they had in common was they were all new to directing.
Oh,
Mhm.
I
Yeah.
think a lot of directors will say, well, I mean, we don't need singles here. Some shots should be a 2-shot. It's like they shouldn't be singled out. It is a 2-shot. That's the correct response from the other side of the 2-shot there. And if they ask, do you think we need singles? I'll, and I don't think we do, I'll absolutely speak up. I don't mind being asked that at all. But that's a little different from what Cynthia was saying. But if they need, or we do need a close-up, or we really do need this. And I think we get asked that sort of thing a lot. And I think we can respond to those sort of questions, whether we need a shot or not.
I can speak a little more directly to what Ariel's asking. I've been in the situation where I've been told by a producer, hey, this person's new. This is basically your episode. I need you to help them out. And in cases like that, I often just take the whole, like, do we, I will make the suggestion, this scene should be covered. You should probably look to get coverage. But when asked, do you think I need coverage? To what Catherine was saying, if I don't think so, say no. If I think they do, yes. But again, I'm not terribly interested in blocking the scene or, giving directing notes. It's not my position. It's not my job. My job is to make sure it's covered and it can cut.
They should have given you to direct the episode.
I feel like many on this call are more qualified
kind of bummed.
sometimes.
Somebody's asking, has anybody shopped out the pre-timing to other script supervisors when you're solo on a show and producers want it before the weekend when you actually have time to do it?
Yeah, I've had, when they demand a timing be done, yes, someone else needs to do the timing if you need it this afternoon. Breakdowns, I feel like I need to do myself to get everything in my head. That's when I really learn the script. So.
Yeah, I'm happy if they want to pay someone else to do the timing. A lot of times you're just too busy. That's fine with me. Yeah, it's helpful.
I hate doing timing so much. I can't stand timings. I'm happy to give it away to somebody. Totally.
Yeah.
It's just that if it is somebody that doesn't know the show, the timing won't be quite accurate.
Well, that's what Sharon Watt is saying in her thing, is that the producer has to be okay with it, it can be a political thing if for that reason, you have to be careful. But if you just say, no, I can't do it, I don't have the time, then let them find somebody, so.
Yeah.
How many of you, if you're doing every episode, how many of you have maybe taken a day off, like the last day of the episode, to prep your next episode and had somebody come in to fill in for you on that last day?
Never, I've never done that.
No.
Oh, my perfect situation was, when I was doing every show, I would take the first day of the next episode always was a tandem day with the last day of the episode prior, and they'd always do the tone meeting right the day before. So I would give somebody those last 2 days of every episode. Seem to happen that much anymore. That was the ideal situation for me.
Ooh, can you repeat that last bit, Rachel? You kind of
Yeah.
cut out for a second, yeah.
Oh, I'm
You
not
got
sure.
it. Tone meeting, you mentioned tone meeting.
Oh, so the ideal, it doesn't seem to be happening as frequently that people are actually having tone meetings on a regular basis. But I was on a series for a long time where I would attend the tone meeting, which would be the day prior to the start of the new episode. And because the first day of a new episode was tandem with the last day of the preceding episode, I would give somebody 2 days. They would take the last 2 days of every episode. I would attend tone, have a day to do some prep, and then start the new episode. It was a lovely system when it worked.
That's great. How many of you go to tone meetings?
I did on one show just because I was alternating on that show. And so I had the time to do it, but it's not a common thing that I've experienced.
It's harder and harder lately to get them to agree to let you come to a tone meeting.
Mhm. Right, because it's just more prep time that they would have to pay you for, right?
That, or I find it's scheduling. They try to schedule it during a shooting day and they don't want to me to step off or bring anyone in.
Yeah.
I've also sometimes, if I have to take a day off, if there's maybe a overlapping episode or something, I don't necessarily, if the last day's incredibly difficult or has too many details to tell somebody, there might be a different, like the first day of the next episode might be a super easy contained day that would be easier to give to someone else, and then I would have much less work giving them a lot of information. It's not ideal, but sometimes, you know, the 7th day off or the first day off works better.
Mary Kelly has her hand raised.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for doing this. I just wanted to mention to everyone that many of the things that have been discussed here, you can find detailed in the Script Supervisor Best Practices Guide that was sent out and shared with the Script Supervisors of Local 161 and is also on the website. So if you were ever looking to that, it deals with prep time and including timing or not in your prep, and when they ask for timing, and a lot of the things that people were talking about, the things that they deal with during prep on various shows. It talks about the importance of billing for your time when you're putting it in, whether that's at the end of the day or on a weekend when you're the only person on a show. It deals with recommendations for multi-camera fee, even where it's not specified in the contract. And just a lot of the things that all of you have been speaking about. Just wanted to give a pitch to remind people that it's there.
That's right. Thank you so much, Mary. Yeah. And please ask for, if you have a third camera, please ask for an additional camera fee for that third camera, not just a multi-camera bump.
Yep, that is the recommendation. And there's even recommendation for the main unit Script Supervisors negotiating for prep time for the people they want to bring in for day players, because if they want you to work, then you need to be paid to work. If they're not interested in having any prep time paid, then you're there to record what you've been given by the main unit person. And, you know, those hero moments can't really be had if we haven't been asked to read the script. So it only behooves them. And I think more and more, especially on a show that makes use of tandems a lot, I think they understand that that's really in their best interests. Anyway, thanks a lot.
Thank you, Mary. Yeah, and if it takes you more time to wrap at the end of the day, if you've negotiated like an hour, like the standard hour wrap at the end of the day, and it takes you longer, please charge for the work that you've done. And if it's taking you longer to do your prep because they keep, sending you new revisions, please charge for the work that you do.
But you would just need to give a heads up.
Exactly. Yeah. Let your UPM know that it's taking.
Yeah.
Well, and just a reminder, as it says in the best practices, there's nothing in the 161 contract that specifies how long wrap takes. And the average hour came from a time when that hour was for lining script notes, lining script pages. It had nothing to do with what you did at the end of the day when they called wrap before you finished your paperwork to get to stow your gear on the truck. It was what happened after that. So don't let anyone bully you into thinking that your wrap time is tied to camera wrap, because it's not. And sometimes, as we all know, that camera truck is a 10-minute van ride away. And you're on the clock for that, just like everybody else who puts their gear back on a truck.
That's right. Sean, you've got your hand raised.
Yeah, and part of this too is if everybody could answer that survey question about what's coming up on the majors negotiations, any of these things that are that you'd like to see happen and so on, make sure that you click on that survey, answer it. It's not going to take a lot of time, but definitely some of these things, do it.
The survey is not that long. And
Exactly, it's very easy.
the negotiations committee really will benefit from having this information. So we're going to send out another reminder. The deadline is the middle of the week. It's July 1st. And it won't even take you, unless you go really into a very lengthy explanation for the things you're asking for, the actual survey would take less than 15 minutes. Wouldn't you agree, Sean?
Yeah, it's very simple. And there you can prioritize the things that you want to see as part of the contract. But I know for me, I put in lots of things about alternating and prep days and things like that. Sick time, time off, making sure your turnarounds are honored if you have overtime for prep, things like that. So do it. It's 15 minutes. It's not hard.
All of this information will be very instrumental in developing proposals to take into the majors, which is coming up at the beginning of the new year. Thank you. Thanks for mentioning that, Sean.
Thank you, guys. Thank you both. Yeah. Do we have any other questions?
Is that the survey? Can I find it on the website right now? Or is it some?
It was emailed to you.
Yeah.
Friday, not this past Friday, the Friday before.
Oh, I probably have it then.
And it's also, you can find it's not a link, but you can find the address for it. It's a SurveyMonkey survey in the Friday check-in. The email is listed, again, not a link, but it's listed in Friday's, end of week check-in. It's at the very end of the message on a flyer. But you can also check your email. It came from Jermaine on Friday, looking at my calendar, Friday the 18th.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
I'm trying to paste the link in, but I can't do it. Great. Cool. I guess, is that it? Are we finished? Anybody else have comments, questions?
Thanks, everybody. That was really helpful.
I have a question. I don't know if this is the best forum for it. I can put it relate to television episodic production. The question is there anything in the local 161 majors contract that talks about bumps regarding supervising a second unit or any of that, other than whatever wrap time it takes to incorporate their work into yours?
Bumps for supervising second unit. Does anybody know about that in our contracts? I remember hearing about it in the West Coast.
Right, yeah.
They get that. that's a Mary Kelly question. I don't think.
There's
we have to-
nothing in the contract that speaks directly to it. It should be whatever amount. You should just bill for be very judicious about keeping track of the time you spend either to prepare for passing information to another script supervisor who will be supervising that unit, or just compiling the information so that you can communicate with assistant directors and assistant camera people in case they're not going to have a script supervisor because it's like some slate of establishing shots or drive-bys or pass-bys that don't have principal talent, in which case, even though it's not the smartest choice, they sometimes don't have a script supervisor because they're, you know, tripping over dollars to pick up nickels. But that does happen. And if you don't have principal photography, which, you know, establishing shots without principal characters is not principal photography, they're allowed to get away with it. But just keep track of how much time you spend. And just hearkening back to when Diane was talking about when she makes a deal for her prep, always, you know, if it should happen that these 2 10-hour days should not cover the demands of what I need to do to be properly prepared for this specific episode, I will, you know, always communicate with you, Mr. Ms. UPM, but I will need to be paid for whatever the amount of time that it is. And once you get to that, when I'm doing it, when I get to my 20th hour or my 19th hour, I will contact that person and say, I have more work to do. I just want to touch base to make sure we're going to be good to go. Don't do the work and then go to them for the money. It's always better to let them choose that they would like to pay you this money because they would like you to do this work. In my humble experience, they're always happier when they get to say, yes, do that.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, and one could say, like, listen, I've got to, you know, prepare some notes for so-and-so who's coming in tomorrow. It might take me another 20 minutes to half an hour tonight. I'll be adding that to my wrap out time. Yeah.
Can I ask a follow-up question? I couldn't find anything regarding wrap out days in the majors contract. I don't know there are prep days that are allotted specifically, depending on the length of the show. Are there specific terms regarding wrap out days? And if not, generally, how many wrap out days do you ask for, if any, for the season or a block of the season?
At the end of the season,
There's nothing in the contract.
no.
Would you ever ask for wrap out days for at the end of the run?
I've asked for like some extra time on the last night of an episode for extra time for wrapping out that episode. But usually, I don't know about you guys, but for me, it's like once I've finished that episode and those notes for that day, that's pretty much it for the end of that episode, unless there's, you know, like it takes a few more minutes just to say, like, we still owe inserts for scene 15 and we still owe scene 24 when we go to the mansion or whatever. It doesn't take that long, but, you know, the extra time that I spend to wrap an episode that particular evening, I'll add on to my whatever, you know, wrap out time that I have for that night. Because the next day you're on another episode. So anybody else? What do you?
At the end of the season, I've asked for, particularly when we're cross shooting, whether intentionally or not, but, you know, in the last week you're shooting all over the place. I've asked for a day or two if I think I might need 2, or, you know, 2 short days, but usually one day can kind of take care of cleaning everything up and getting it nice and neat, little pile, and sending it off, you know, because you have to, you know, you're sending entire scripts out finally, you know, so yeah, I asked for a day.
I've asked for a week and gotten that. So
Nice. Yeah, the contract is like the minimum. You are free to negotiate for more.
Yeah. How about, I remember people talking about when they're cross-boarding that, you know, on the weekend, they'll maybe do some extra homework to, I don't know, not necessarily for prepping, but to like double check their paperwork and to track that everything. I think Sharon Watt might have mentioned this, that they'll maybe do some extra work on a weekend to track their show, track that, you know, what scenes are still owed, check their, you know, their math. Or am I right, Sharon? Do I remember you saying that correctly?
I always do work at the weekend just to sort of stay on top of things, because, you know, it's like you don't want to get to the end of the show and then sort of find out that you made a mistake somewhere, or you dropped an eighth, or you forgot to credit something correctly, or all that kind of stuff. So I don't put in for that, but I know that I will ask for a wrap day. So I sort of take it to be that wrap day, whether it's one day or if it's more complicated job, it might be more, but I sort of take it that wrap day will sweep up all of that extra work, because it's kind of, you know, it's kind of time that might be just like 10 minutes here, 15 minutes here, 5 minutes here, you know, and it's kind of, I don't want to sort of keep adding all of that, you know, to every week, you know, but if I get that wrap day, I feel that sort of takes care of it, you know. And on, you know, on more complicated jobs, you know, if you're owing a lot of inserts or pickups and stuff like that, there was one job that I did where it took me like 3 days just to come up with a kind of library, you know, that because we just had so many inserts, you know, so that was something that I knew I couldn't sort of sign off without making.
Sorry, my battery's running.
Yeah, I'm sorry, everyone. I have to go a little after 3, so hope this helped. Diane, I have to go. I'm sorry.
I think we've covered pretty much everything. So I'm just plugging in.
Bye, guys. Bye, Cynthia.
Bye, thanks.
So thank you, everybody. Thank you. Let's see. Great. Okay. Yeah, that's it. Thank you so much, everybody. Thank you for our speakers to participate. And
Thanks for doing this, Diane.
Yeah, thank you, Diane, for your hard work.
Yes.
Yeah. And, you know, we've got the mentorship program at 161. So if there's anybody who's newer to the union, it's really helpful to have somebody to be able to call and have on hand to like quickly text a question to or ask a question to. So, you know, if you'd like a mentor, check it out. All right.
All right.
Thanks so much.
Bye.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.